Hi, welcome to my new web series. This is called What Sharon's Reading. So my first web series is all about the new shiny stuff that's been coming into my office, hot off the presses from the publishers. And of course, I cannot possibly read them as fast as they come in. So this is about what I'm actually reading. Now, I'm on several book award committees, and I read a lot, and I have a lot of opinions, and I want to share some of the stellar books that I've been reading, things that I think you should be reading with your kids, things that you can recommend to your kids, things that if you haven't purchased for your library, I think you should think about. So most of the time, there won't be quite this many books because I don't actually read this many in a month, but because this is the first time, I'm going to cover quite a lot of ground. I'll start with the middle grade novels, and then I'll go into more middle school and high school. All right, so the first one, I don't actually have a copy of the book because I gave it away. This is as close as I can get. Are you ready? It's called Absolutely Almost by Lisa Graff. I love this book. Absolutely love it. It's about a kid. His name is Albie. And he has some problems. He's never been very good at school, and he struggles a little bit. His mom is a perfectionist and expects all kinds of great things from him. One day, they hire him a new babysitter named Callista, and Callista is very artistic and teaches him that he can be good at things. And he teaches him about superheroes and about how superheroes can have different strengths, and that he has different strengths as well. And this book is about self-exploration and really how to define yourself and how to accept yourself as good enough when the world is telling you it's not. I really, really love this story. You know, the characters are very flawed, and it came to a nice conclusion at the end. A very good middle grade book and worth discussion, which I think is something. And also, it could be worth discussion in your superhero talks this summer about what makes a hero, what makes somebody good at something. All right. This book I just finished. It's called Dash by Kirby Larson. I book talked it when it first came out, and then of course I had to get my hands on it. So I read it. Kirby Larson is one of my all-time favorite authors. I will read anything she writes. This book is phenomenal. It's a story. It's based on a true story. You'll see on the back, this is the true little girl and her dog. And it's about this girl named Mitzi, and she's Japanese American. And it's during World War II in the internment camps. She's in Seattle. The problem is that they have very strict rules in the internment camps. And one of those rules is no pets. And so this little girl, she has to leave not only her home and everything she knows, but she has to leave her dog too, which is just heartbreaking. So her neighbor takes her dog in, and you just love the characters in Kirby Larson's books. So her neighbor takes the dog in and takes care of him, and she starts getting letters in the camp written from the dog, Dash. They're just the sweetest things you've ever read in your life. Of course, this book is tough. It's about bullying, it's about racism, it's about war. Of course, they're living in a camp. I mean, it's horrible. But it's written at that middle grade level so that it's not going to give anyone nightmares. No one dies. Some people kind of go missing, but there's some hope. And I think it's a good discussion point. It's not really depressing. You know, she gets her dog back at the end, of course. So, I mean, it's a really, really wonderful read. It's a softer version of these events. And because it's about this little girl and dog rather than about the historical events, it's a good entry point for those young readers. I highly, highly recommend this one. All right. Are you ready for the next one? This book here is by Anne Martin. It's called Rain, Rain. Let me take a look at that. And you'll see they're homonyms. And this book is fabulous. It's about a girl who has Asperger's, and she really likes homonyms. She collects them, and the best ones are ones that are triples that have 3 different spellings and 3 different meanings, and she just loves that so much. And she has a dog who she calls Rain, and because it is a homonym, and she loves homonyms, so of course she names her best friend a homonym. And she's so attached to this dog, but one time, and she has a lot of rules about life, and her dad just does not understand her. He's really impatient. He doesn't understand how to talk to her, and he doesn't understand about her rules. He definitely doesn't understand about her homonyms, which is so sad. And so one day, he lets Rain out during a storm, and a really bad storm, and Rain gets lost. And of course, Rose is so upset about this, and she tries to find him. Now, I don't want to ruin it, because you should definitely read it, but there is a twist in here that is just heartbreaking. The dog doesn't die, I promise. I hate it when the dog dies. It's just unacceptable. The dog doesn't die. But Rose has to make some tough decisions, and this is a really good discussion book about what's yours and what's right and how to make the right decision. Really, really wonderful. The only thing I don't like about this book is the end. In the end, she goes to live with her uncle because he understands her a little bit better, which is great. But the way it happens is a little, maybe it's because it's an 11-year-old's version of events. It's just kind of one day her dad says, "See ya," and disappears, and the uncle picks her up. I was a little unsatisfied by that. It makes me sad in these books when there are no social workers, there are no teachers, nobody's worried about this kid. I don't know. Anyway, but that's, my cross as an adult, we worry, right? Anyway, a really, really, really good book. I highly recommend it. It's going to go over like gangbusters with your kids. And it has that really, really great Asperger's character, which are just written so well right now. All right, more. Highly anticipated companion is the Madman of Piney Woods. It was a companion to Elijah Buxton. Wonderful, and it's really good on audio. You can get it on Listen Up Vermont. The story is just great. It's thick. It's an adventure. It's 2 stories, and at first I was kind of confused because I was listening to it because there's 2 parallel stories. There's a white boy, comes from an Irish family who lives kind of on one side of the tracks, and then a black boy who's actually related to Elijah Buxton, and on the other side, and their paths cross. And it was really satisfying when their paths finally crossed, because they're talking about a character one of them calls the Madman of Piney Woods, and one of them calls the Lion Man. And he's this homeless man. He was a veteran, and he is homeless, and he's living in the woods, and people are very scared of him, and people treat him fairly poorly. And these 2 boys end up saving his life. Actually, I'll take that back. He passes away at the end, which is a very tough scene. They're there with him when he dies. So this is a hard book. There are some hard topics in this book. War, bullying, racism from both sides. The Irish family, they try to have the boys over at each other's families for dinner, and it's horrifying the way they treat each other. But these boys are really, really good friends. And at the end, they do really good stuff. And they try to save this man who sacrificed himself basically for the country and was getting nothing good back. Really, really good story. Worth a discussion. A good topic about racism, friendship. And I like that it has those perspectives, and just the fact that they call them different names. They call this man different names, and they don't know they're talking about the same person when they're together. I think is a good exercise for the kids. Definitely a thick book, a challenging book, but if you have the kids reading Elijah Buxton in classes, this is definitely a good one to have them pick up if they're good readers, or it might be a good one to read together as a class. So definitely recommend it to the kids. I think they're just gonna love it so much. I did. All right, let's see what else we have. Ooh, how about some fantasy? Now, I will tell you, I am not a huge fantasy fan. I have trouble with the other worlds and things, and I can't get names straight in my head. If you met me, I can't remember names to save my life. But this book, love it. Gabriel, Finley, and the Raven's Riddle. I listened to this one on audio too, on Listen Up Vermont. Oh my gosh, so good. It is about a boy named Gabriel, and he's lost his father. His father mysteriously disappeared, which felt very kind of Inkheart to me. And in this story, similar to the Golden Compass, there are these crows. Ravens. I'm sorry, ravens. And the ravens can become friends, basically lifelong friends with humans. And they have this very special bond, and they're magic. And so this boy is learning about all of this when he turns 12, and his father is sending him clues about where he is and where he might have gone. Meanwhile, he's living in a house with his aunt, who's wonderful, and a friend of the family who's cuckoo nuts, and her daughter, who's trying to escape the cuckoo nuts. It's all hysterically funny, and meanwhile, he's talking to ravens, like they talk, and he's trying to find his father. So this is grand adventure, and it's all about friendship and what's right and what's wrong. And of course, the ravens, I'm sure you could analyze it to death, but there's like the ravens versus the pigeons, and you know, some are evil and some aren't, and there's some really bad ravens out there that are trying to take things away from him, and then there's his family. And I think this story is just wonderful. The kids are going to eat it up. It's a wonderful, there's lots of riddles in it, tons of riddles. Oh, it's wonderful. It definitely plays off Alice in Wonderland's ravens, and I just think this is just going to be a huge hit with your fantasy readers. Solid middle grade read, and like I said, really good on audio. All right, what's next for you? How about this one? Now, Katherine Erskine. I also talked about this one in one of my first podcasts, and I had to pick it up because I love Katherine Erskine so much. Love her, and I thought I have to read this, so I did, and it's fantastic. It takes place in the 1300s in England, and it's about a boy who's an albino, which is not handled very well in those times. Most people think that he's either an angel or a devil and treat him accordingly, and so he has to hide himself all the time. Now, his brother has gone off to war, and a war, of course, was very different back in those days, so you could actually track a battle, and the battles were kind of contained and in hillsides. They didn't take over whole towns. So he's basically traveling around England asking people where the battle is, trying to find his brother. And along the way, he meets all kinds of characters, all the while trying to, you know, gauge how people are going to treat him and hiding his identity as an albino. And it's just wonderful. It's a great adventure story. A little on the violent side, but there's a lot about, you know, whether who's really an enemy and who you should be fighting against and who's your friend and who should you trust. And it's a really good story, and it takes place in the 1300s, which, I don't know, it just is an awesome setting for a story. So if any of your children are looking for these adventures, this one is where it's at. All right, how about another one? Okay, dark humor. If you like British mysteries, you must read this one. This book the audiobook won an award for Best Children's Audiobook of 2014. It's just phenomenal. It's Jane Entwistle does the audio on Listen Up Vermont. Oh my gosh, so good. She had me laughing so hard. I was driving around as I do, and I'm just laughing to myself because it's so flippin' funny. So it's the Scandalous Sisterhood of Prickwillow Place, and it's about this group of girls. And the funniest thing about these group of girls is they all have these ridiculous names. And let me see, I'll read them to you. It's Dear Roberta, ready? Disgraceful Mary, Dull Martha, poor thing, Stout Alice, Smooth Kitty, Pocked Louise, and Dour Eleanor. And throughout the entire book, that's what they're called. So it's not like Alice, it's Stout Alice, and it's Smooth Kitty. That's how they're talked about the whole time. It's hysterical. So in this story, they live in a finishing school, boarding school, and it takes place in the 1800s, and it's very well researched. And there's Julie Berry, she's good stuff. So they live in this boarding school, and they have this horrible headmistress who they just can't stand. She's just mean, and they have this family dinner every Sunday night with the headmistress's brother. And one Sunday, they are sitting down to dinner, and the headmistress and her brother drop dead. And so, because it's a British mystery, the girls are like, we're going to get blamed. We're going to have to go home. We don't want to go home. Our parents are terrible. What are we going to do? Ooh, we can be independent. No one will tell us what to do if we can just get rid of them. So what do? They bury them in the garden. Of course they do. And this is just where it gets hysterically dark and twisted. So they bury them in the garden, and then one of them is very scientific and starts doing experiments to figure out how they died. They figured out it was poison, but they don't know who poisoned them because they're like, well, we cooked the dinner. We didn't kill them, but everyone's going to think we did, and what do we do? So this whole story is about how they're trying to figure out who killed their headmistress, but then on the same time, people are looking for them because they think they're still alive, and they want them to think they're still alive because they don't want any grown-ups coming in and taking over. And so they're impersonating the headmistress and lying, and they're trying to keep track of their lies, and it's just getting bigger and bigger and bigger and more hilarious until the whole thing collapses like a house of cards, and it's just hysterically funny. It ends very well. It actually maybe a little too well. They don't see a lot of consequences from what they do, which is maybe one downfall of the book, but it's hysterical. And if your kids like this kind of historical adventure kind of stuff, it's all over it. It's also, I think, a really solid adult read if you like British mysteries. So it's, it's a little scandalous. There's death. It's gruesome. So I would probably save it for your, maybe middle school, pre-middle school age group, depending on the reader. It's also substantial length. All right, I have another one that I don't actually have the copy of for you. It's here, and it's kind of faded. How about that? One Safe Place by Tania Unsworth. I actually handed it off to another librarian to read because it was so good. This is a wonderful story. I'm always looking for those really interesting science fiction stories, maybe even dystopian, that can be read on a middle school, non-nightmare inducing level, but still thought-provoking. And this is one of those stories, One Safe Place. Okay, so it's about a boy who is living on a farm with his grandfather in the middle of nowhere, and one day his grandfather dies, and he buries him, and but they have a farm to run, and he doesn't know how he's going to run the farm without his grandfather. And so his grandfather had told him that there was a city out in the distance somewhere that he'd never been, and so he thought, I'm going to go to this city, try to find someone to help me run the farm, and that way I can survive. So he takes off for the city. The only problem is that you come to find out that this story actually takes place in the future. And this city is ridiculous. It's all dystopian horror. It's all the haves and the have-nots. Basically, the rich people have taken control of the water supply of the city, and so the poor people have no water, and the rich people have fountains and lawns and things. And the rich people are just rich, and the poor people are all living on the street. So he makes friends with some street kids and is living on the street for a little while with these kids. Along comes this kind of dapper kid who says, hey, you know what? There's an orphanage at the edge of town. And they're like, that doesn't exist. That's a fantasy. He's like, no, it really does. So he convinces him and his friend to go to this orphanage. And they're promising them food and they'll take care of them. Well, there is food and a bed and shelter and water. The problem is that the elderly population in this city use these kids, and basically what they do is kind of a body swap so that they can relive their youth, and they allude to some of them actually taking over permanently, which is just creepy. And so they try to find kids with happy childhoods so that these old people can take over their bodies, and there's this really disturbing drugging process, and it hurts a lot to switch bodies, and nobody wants to do it, but they don't know why they're doing it to them, and it's just so creepy. So this one kid, he's figuring out that this is what's happening, and so he's trying to talk to the other kids about what they're going to do about it. Meanwhile, his friend has come with him, and she was kind of an extra. He told them, I won't come without my friend. They said, fine. Well, they're sending some kids off to be adopted, and they come to find out that that means murdered, and that's going to happen to his friend because she didn't have a happy childhood, and no old person would want to change lives with her because she didn't have a happy childhood. Oh my God, is your head exploding yet? So yeah, this story is about the escape. So it's tough. It's borderline, Hunger Games territory here. It's not overtly violent, but it alludes to a lot. It's disturbing. Maybe more disturbing for adults than it is for kids, but a really interesting story and worth a discussion with your teens, middle school especially, about what's right and, the haves and the have-nots, and then, whether or not you would want to go back and re-experience your childhood. I mean, whether that's worth any money. I don't know. It's disturbing, but really, really well done. Whew, all right. I need some water. I've got 3 more YA books. The first one I talked about in one of my previous podcasts, If You're Reading This, by Trent Reedy, and I had to read it because I love him so much. He wrote Words in the Dust, which is like one of the best books ever. This story is wonderful. I loved this story so much. It's about a kid who he lost his father in Afghanistan when he's young, and when he turns 16, he starts getting letters from his dad, and he really wants to know about his dad, but the letters contain a lot of details about life that change the way he thinks about his father. And he doesn't know why he's suddenly getting them, and so he's trying to figure out who's sending them, and is it his mom, and did his mom love his dad, and who are these people in the story, and he's trying to track down all these people and figure out who his dad was. It's really wonderful. It's a little bittersweet. It's hard because his dad isn't coming home at the end, but it's about him trying to figure out who his dad is, and his dad gave him this kind of wonderful gift. It's really good. It's definitely a tough topic, and he gives them like rules for life in each of the letters, and he tries to follow them. But they're things like ask a girl out, go to a dance. And he said he sent these letters to him when he's 16 because this is his prime time of his high school career, and he should be out there, and he wanted him to live his life to the fullest. So the message is great. Definitely a great book for your middle school kids, but tough topic. All right, on a lighter note, Evil Librarian. I've wanted to read this book for a while, and I finally read it, and this book is weird. It's about this high school where this librarian moves in, and he's very charming, but something's not quite right about him, and nobody believes him, and the main character's name is Sin, and her best friend Annie falls head over heels for this guy, and is basically following him around like a puppy, and Sin is very worried about this, and then the whole parallel story is hysterical, because they're putting on Sweeney Todd, and so, she's the set designer, so she's trying to make this, chair where the people get sucked into the abyss after they're killed by Sweeney Todd, and meanwhile there's this evil librarian who they think he's trying to suck everyone into an alternate dimension. Anyway, there's lots of demons and crazy otherworldly characters, but at the heart of it all, it's about these 2 best friends and she's trying to save her. It's very fantastic. The librarian is truly evil, but charming. Dangerous combination. But hey, at least they spend time in the library, right? The girls who like paranormal kind of stuff, they're gonna eat this up. And plus it's funny, really funny. One more, you ready? Okay, this one is definitely high school. It's called Girls Like Us by Gail Giles. I love Gail Giles. She is one of those people who can pack a punch in a small book. This book is really wonderful. It's short, good for your reluctant readers, but definitely more on the high school end. This book is about these 2 girls, Quincy and Biddy, and they're both graduates of a special education program. Quincy was hit in the head with a brick by her mom's boyfriend and has some neurological deficits because of that. And Biddy was born with some deficits, and so is developmentally delayed. So they both have very different issues. And at the end, the counselor pairs them up to become roommates as they try to go on their own. Now, they're very different, and Quincy is very, very harsh, and she does not want to deal with Biddy, and they don't really get along, and they live in the apartment near an older lady who Biddy is doing her cleaning and cooking for her, and Quincy goes off and works somewhere else. Some harsh stuff happens in this book. There is one rape There is talk of another rape. Biddy has a reputation of being a slut, and people talk about her having a kid when she was in school, and kind of find out that she was raped, but she never told anyone about it. Now, the one drawback of this book is there's no rape resources at the end of this book. I really wish there had been, because, you know, they go to the police about some things, but not everything, and I don't like that gray area. I really wish for teens that there would be something in the end that says, if you're a victim of sexual assault, get help, here's where to go. But maybe that's just me being overprotective again. This is a wonderful, wonderful book. It's told in alternating perspectives, and it's a lot to think about. The cover is terrible. Ugh, gross. And it's in that weird period because it's post-high school, but these girls are developmentally delayed, so I think it's completely appropriate for high school, and it's worth discussion. This could make a really good book group discussion. But like I said, you know, it's got some really, really tough stuff in it, but these are things that the kids are worried about anyway, and they're worth discussing. All right, that's what Sharon's reading, or at least the good stuff. I didn't tell you about the other stuff, because why talk about bad stuff when you can talk about the good? I hope that you like it. I will put together a list of the books so you can take a look at them for yourself. And as I keep reading, and after all the nomination periods are done, I will start reading newer stuff, and I'll keep telling you. If you have suggestions of what I should be reading, if you have ideas, if you have comments, please let me know. I'm always open for suggestions. Here's how you can find me. Email is usually best. Anytime. I'd love to hear from you. Thanks for listening.